You remember the softness of that blanket, the way it held your body before any human did, before words, before explanations, before the world asked you to grow up. It wasn't just a blanket. It was the first thing that didn't leave. It didn't yell. It didn't confuse you. It stayed. Quiet. Predictable. Safe. So maybe it makes sense that even now, years later, you still find yourself reaching for that old hoodie, rewatching that same show, lighting that same scent, curling up with the familiar like it's oxygen. What if that isn't regression? What if that's remembrance? There are some of us who never fully let go of childhood comforts, not because we're immature, but because they were the only thing that ever truly made us feel whole. You weren't clinging to a toy. You were clinging to safety, to certainty, to a moment in time when something finally made sense. If this feels like you, stay. You're not broken. You're remembering how to feel safe again. There's a reason you form deep bonds with objects, shows, sounds from childhood. It's not random. It's attachment. When emotional attunement is shaky, when caregivers are unpredictable or unavailable, your nervous system finds new anchors. Soft ones, repeatable ones, ones that don't demand, but offer. The brain is wired to reach for patterns that soothe. If your early environment was unstable, you reached sideways. To teddy bears, to cartoons, to rituals you could control. Because they didn't walk out. They didn't shift moods. They were small, but they stayed. And that became safety. You learned to love objects before you trusted people. You learned to self-soothe by ritual when co-regulation wasn't offered. That wasn't weakness. That was survival. So now, as an adult, you still light the same vanilla candle. Still sleep with a pillow pressed against your chest. Still feel an ache in your throat when you hear a lullaby you forgot you remembered. You call it nostalgia, but your body calls it regulation. These comforts aren't childish. They're sacred. They're the language your nervous system wrote when words were too big, too far away. And still, part of you feels embarrassed, ashamed even, like you should have outgrown these things by now. But how do you outgrow what never got completed? How do you let go of the only things that ever felt like home? The truth is, many of your adult behaviors are echoes. Echoes of a younger you trying to finish a sentence they were never allowed to speak. You binge watch the same shows because they offer structure. You eat the same meal when sad because it holds memory. You keep that worn-out hoodie because it reminds you of a time when no one expected anything from you. These aren't random habits. They're evidence of adaptation. Your brain remembered what calmed it, and it never forgot. There's a concept in psychology called transitional objects. Objects that stand in for connection when connection is inconsistent. They bridge the gap between aloneness and togetherness. As a child, this might be a stuffed animal. As an adult, it might be a playlist, a sweatshirt, a scent. It's not immature. It's brilliant. It's how you taught yourself to stay alive in a world that didn't always know how to hold you. You didn't cling to toys. You clung to patterns of peace. And you still do. You carry them with you now, often without knowing. Tiny rituals, silent anchors. You press your fingers together when you're overwhelmed. You hum when no one's listening. You sleep facing the wall, just like you did in that childhood room with the night light and the cracked door. If this is you, you've always known how to find safety. You built it out of scraps, repetition, texture, familiarity. It's not that you're stuck in the past. It's that your past never stopped asking to be felt. And these patterns, they show up everywhere. In love, you're drawn to people who make you feel held, even when they don't stay. You crave warmth but flinch when it gets too close. In solitude, you surround yourself with background noise, not because you're bored, but because silence once meant abandonment. In stress, you go back to that one meal, that one movie, that one worn-out playlist that knows your whole heart. If this is your story, you're not too much. You were undercomforted. The nervous system remembers what the mind tries to forget. And when it doesn't feel safe, it seeks the original balm. Not because it's logical, because it works. This is why healing doesn't always look like growth. Sometimes it looks like curling up again, holding that stuffed bear, letting yourself cry during the ending of a cartoon made for kids. There's wisdom in returning. There's repair in repetition. You're not regressing. You're reparenting. And maybe no one told you this, but healing doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to look like cutting cords or burning the past. Sometimes it's a quiet walk back, to the things that stayed, to the soft ones, to the gentle spaces where you didn't have to earn love. You needed warmth. You found it in fabric. You needed stability. You found it in reruns. You needed someone. And when no one came, you made do with what you had. That wasn't regression. That was resilience. There's a part of your brain, the limbic system, that processes emotion and memory. When early experiences lacked consistent safety, it clings to sensory cues. A smell, a sound, a texture, because those are the threads it uses to stitch together meaning. Comfort objects become emotional bridges. And those bridges don't just vanish when you grow up. They deepen. This is why adult life feels unbearable sometimes. You're expected to function without your bridges, to hustle while hollow, to speak fluently in logic while your body still speaks the language of teddy bears and soft lullabies. But here's what's real. You don't need to abandon comfort to grow. You need to include it. Growth doesn't mean giving up what worked. It means learning how to hold it differently, to honor it, not hide it, to weave it into your life now, with intention, not shame. If the child in you still reaches for softness, let them. You're not coddling weakness. You're answering a call. So when the world feels loud again, when your chest tightens and your thoughts race, don't fight it. Don't shame it. Go back to the thing that helped you survive, not to get stuck, but to feel what safety once felt like. Sit in the hoodie that smells like memory. Wrap the blanket around your shoulders like armor. Let the cartoon voices wash over you like lullabies from a world that never judged you. These aren't crutches. They're codes, written by a younger you who didn't give up. Here are a few ways to walk with that comfort today, not in secrecy, but in sacredness. First, when you feel overwhelmed, place your palm flat on your chest. Breathe in for 4, out for 6. Whisper, I'm here. You're safe. Your body needs your voice more than your mind needs the answer. Second, choose one object from childhood that still feels meaningful. Hold it. Write down the moment it carried you through. That moment deserves to be seen. Third, ask yourself, what comfort did I create? Because no one gave it to me. Let that answer rewrite the story of your strength. You were never too sensitive. You were never too emotional. You just felt deeply in a world that didn't know how to meet you there. You taught yourself tenderness. You built your own repair. You turned small things into sanctuary. And that deserves reverence, not ridicule. So here you are now, grown on the outside, still holding fragments of a younger self. A self who knew how to cope before they even knew what coping meant. You don't need to let go of that version. You need to return to them, not to stay stuck, but to bring them home. Because healing isn't always forward. Sometimes it spirals. Sometimes it circles back to places that made you feel human, and safe, and seen. You might always find comfort in soft things, in quiet rooms, in repetition. That doesn't mean you're broken. That means your nervous system is wise. It means you're still listening, still honoring, still healing in slow, sacred ways. And maybe, just maybe, that old blanket wasn't just fabric. Maybe it was the first mirror, the first witness, the first thing that said, without words, you deserve to be held. So if this sounded like your story, tell me one word you needed to hear as a child. Write it below. Let it breathe. Let it land. Someone else might need to see it too. And before you go, share this quietly with someone who's still sleeping with the lights on, who still keeps the bear on the shelf, even if they say it's just decoration, who still finds comfort in small, soft, silent things. Not because they're behind, but because they're returning. And returning is a kind of miracle. You were never weak. You were wise. You still are.